Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace.
Hey folks, Ahmed here from Boutique Growth. Before I send you over to today's episode, I want to invite you to join me live on the next installment of Power Positioning for Consultants. The battle today is the battle for attention. Consulting markets are more competitive and more saturated than ever before, and clients have more options than they've ever had before. Therefore, for you to stand out from the noise, separate yourself from the pack, you have to master the art of strategic positioning. We've got a framework for that we call Power Positioning that we've helped over 1,000 consulting businesses apply with great success in every B2B consulting vertical you can think of. And I'm happy to share it with you in a live workshop for just $7. Here's what some folks are saying about the workshop. Seth says it is probably the best $7 I've ever spent. Ricardo says if you're a consultant struggling to stand out in a crowded market, this workshop is not just helpful, it's essential. Jordan says, fantastic relevant support for solo and micro consultants looking to set themselves up for success in a highly saturated market. Roger says, informative, no sales pitch, just relevant information that I can use. And there are many, many more like this. I invite you to join us for our next live workshop for just $7. You can learn more at powerpositioningworkshop.com. With that, here is today's episode.
Client brought this dilemma to me this morning. In one of our coaching calls. She has been pursuing a particular market. This market's relatively nascent. It's still evolving. There's plenty of reasons to believe and data to lean on to indicate that this market's going to be a big opportunity and it's going to grow. But it's still fairly early. And this particular consultant's heart is in this market. I mean, she almost became a consultant to pursue this market. It's a passion of hers. She's very much aligned with this market in terms of her identity. And so she really wants to make it work. And she's been trying to make it work. And there's been some traction, and there's been also some red flags. Red flags around not so much that the market isn't viable, but that it's early. And perhaps it's not quite viable yet. Okay. And I'll share with you in brief my advice to the client, but then I want to unpack it here and get your perspective on it for our audience. I warned her against something that I don't warn against very often. This is kind of an interesting conversation, but I warned her against being too in love with the market. And the reason that's a fairly unconventional advice is, often we tell people, fall in love with your market, not your product. In other words, have allegiance and loyalty towards the market and their needs, and be willing to develop and deliver whatever product that they need. That's going to maintain relevance and ensure that you're relevant because your allegiance is to the market, not to your product. And this situation is a little bit different because she's trying to make this market work, but we have to acknowledge she has bias. She wants to make it work. She wants to make it work too bad, too much. And so what's going to happen is she's going to really emphasize and exaggerate even the reasons why it could work because she wants it to. And she's going to minimize and rationalize reasons why it can't work. And one thing that smart people are really, really good at doing is rationalizing things that are not aligned with their point of view. What do you think?
I think it's always a sad moment. We have to have this conversation, right? Because you see someone who is so incredibly passionate, right? I'm assuming she's like, to your point, she's so excited. She's passionate about it. She sees something in it. She's probably seeing further ahead, right? She's looking forward weeks, months, years, whatever the timeline is. And she understands what is going to happen. But that's not going to put food on the table, right? That's not going to get her into a gainfully functional business. And so, the first thing I want to just say out loud is that it's difficult, right? It's challenging, it's frustrating, and it can be a little bit heartbreaking to go down this path. But what it points back to is something that, we have people focusing on, which is like really having deep conversations with the people who you want to serve so that you can objectively understand what the opportunity is. And so, for this person, that can be also difficult because you want to get on those calls and convince, right? You want to get on those calls and promote. You want to get those calls and predict, when really what you need to do is listen and recognize that maybe now isn't the time. Doesn't necessarily mean she needs to shut it down forever, but it could be that today's not the day and that something else needs to, be in place so that she can find business, move forward, learn more, and follow the market.
Sometimes you're too early, right?
Mhm.
And jury's out on this particular situation. There's still some things that she can do to pursue this market in the immediate, and she's going to. But sometimes you're too early, and it's, you could look at that as a good thing. Think about people that were doing deep work in AI 5 years ago. They were pretty early. There wasn't much of a market, but boy, are they ahead of the curve today,
Mhm.
right? Think about people that got in early on search engine optimization when Google first hit. There was a handful of experts, and they really rose to the top as that became more of a priority of an exercise for organizations. And so this particular consultant may be too early. It doesn't mean abandon ship necessarily, because all the conversations he's having now, and the research he's doing to understand market needs, and the projects that she may sign in in the next few months are all kind of building a foundation. She may have to go out and do a few other projects, right? And I think we talked about this in the episode on risk. I forget the exact title of that episode, but we kind of presented um, different risk management mitigation strategies for a level of business. And at the foundation level, when you're just getting going, when you're getting off the ground, your biggest risk is running out of runway, right? Running out of money, and then having to go out and get a job or do whatever. And the advice that we gave in that episode was, when you're getting off the ground, don't build the passion business.
Mhm.
Don't even try to build the perfect business. Go out and solve problems. And actually, that's funny, because in this particular client's case, if she went out into another market where she has way more experience, she could just start collecting checks, literally, right? Go and solve those problems. Build up a solid base of clients and revenue, so you're secure in your consultancy. And from there, from that position of strength, then make moves to build the perfect business and the perfect offer and pursue the perfect market. And sometimes that means that you pull back from the market that you want or the offer that you want in the immediate, in order to sustain the business and stabilize it, in order to return back to what you want to build as a second step.
Mhm. That can be very true. And then there are also the scenarios where the market that you're in love with just isn't going to work, right? For whatever reason. The problem isn't big enough. They don't have the money to pay. There are multiple reasons why it won't work. And I think it's also worth looking at that as, that option or that situation as it comes up, because you can waste a lot of time, spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time trying to make it work, right? Trying to fit this market into your solution. And that's a dangerous path to go down if you don't pay attention to the indicators, if you don't, let in the real evidence that's around you. That's where, I believe a lot of consultants actually get themselves in trouble, right? Because they're so connected to the thing that they want to have happen, right? To the market that they want to serve, that they fail to notice that that market doesn't want to be served.
Yeah. And I think it's also a really helpful reminder for everybody. You want to pursue big markets.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about niche, although I don't really use that word much, but niche and specialization and focus is a word that we use quite a bit. We talk a lot about that, but I don't want anyone to interpret that as meaning go after small markets. No.
Mhm.
In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Not that small markets, not that you cannot succeed as a consultant in small markets. That's not what I'm suggesting. But ideally, I want you to go after big markets, huge markets with tons of demand and tons of competition, and come up with a proposition, positioning, offer, etc., that is highly specific and highly dialed into a segment of that market.
Mm-hmm.
But a segment that's large and robust, such that you look at it and go, I'm never going to run out of opportunity here. You look at our business and maybe it's a little bit extreme. We serve B2B consultants early stage. But boy, I mean, when are we ever going to run out of opportunity? And the opportunity is replenishing, right? Because as we talked about on many episodes here, there's new consultants entering the market every single day. So the market is always growing, and there's always new entrants coming into the market. And yeah, that might be a little bit too broad for you, and that might be extreme, but you want to look at your market and go, yeah, it's big. There's tons of opportunity. I'm not going to run out anytime soon. And there's always new entrants coming into this market, so I can build my career around this. I think, when the opposite is true and you're starting to feel like your market's too small, that's when scarcity really, really sets in and causes all kinds of other problems.
So what do I do if that small market that doesn't seem like it's going to work is the one that I love, and that big market that seems to have all the opportunity just isn't as exciting to me? I mean, that's what you're really talking about, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of options. One is you keep working in the small market, but you go and do some deals in the bigger market to pay the bills until the small market catches up and grows, right? And it might take a few years. And when that happens, you're well positioned because you've been laying the groundwork. Another option is you can expand the scope of that small market. So are there adjacent markets you can also serve, right? There is no such thing as a small market. It all depends on how you define it, right? So are there adjacent markets beside that you could include within the scope of your target market and therefore make it larger? And then finally, I don't really believe that any market is not viable. I think it depends on what you do in that market, right? So if you think about, X and Y, X being the market, Y being the offer. There are lots of Ys for a given X, right? There's lots of offers and problems to solve for a given X. And yeah, your Y that you want to solve for may not be viable today, but there's another Y. There's another problem to be solved in that market that you can certainly build a business around. So there's always options. I think the thing that I warned this client against, and I'm now warning you listeners against, is be aware of your bias. Like that's the take home message here is be aware of your bias. If you're really trying to force something, I'm not even saying abandon it. And my message to this client was not abandon her focus. It was just be aware of your bias and how that might cloud your decision making.